There are a ton of different blur types inside of After Effects. A blur is when After Effects is taking the pixels that are next to each other. I'm going to zoom in here quite a bit. And it looks at this pixel, and it averages the colors and gives us another pixel next to it, which gives us the illusion of a blur. So let me go ahead and zoom out. I'll go back to fit. For this particular lesson, if you want to follow along, please open up the lander.png file that you'll find inside of your work files folder. I'm going to go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen. And as you can see here, the people at Adobe have thought of blurs that I never could have thought of in a million years. Bilateral blur, box blur, directional blur, a lot of blurs, people. So let's go ahead and experiment. Let's start off with the world's first blur that everyone loves, Gaussian blur. Now, whether it's the first blur or not, really not important, but people use this blur a lot in Photoshop. The way a Gaussian blur works is it blurs everything in your image based on a radius here. So I can take this slider, and as you can see here, it blurs out and averages the pixels. Now, the Gaussian blur, I'm going to turn it off by hitting the little FX here, also has a similar blur called Smart Blur. The Smart Blur has a radius and threshold, and it will try its best to not blur the things that are in the center as best it can. So it's going to take the blur, as you can see here, I'm increasing the radius up quite a bit, and it's going to try to give us a blur, but once again, it's going to try its best to not blur things too much. Okay, so we have a couple of modes here. We can go to edge only. We can go to overlay edge. We can go to normal. And threshold pretty much tells the effect how many pixels to look at before it evaluates what it needs to blur. So that's a smart blur. I'm going to turn that one off. I'll go back to effect. We also have a box blur. Now, a box blur blurs things in iterations of a blur radius. So these kind of go together. I'll twirl these open. As you can see, I have a blur radius. And when we use this radius, we're given a kind of a diamond effect built on the boxes. And we can smooth that out by using this iteration slider. So that's a box blur. So as you can see, there's tons and tons of blurs. Now, what I want to also show you is how we can animate a blur. All right, so we have a radial blur in here. And right away, you can see that it applies a radial blur, and we can use this slider here to increase that effect and decrease the effect and turn it completely off. We also have a slider here that we can use if you don't want to use this slider. We also have the ability to choose whether we want to have a spin or a zoom. So for all of you Star Wars fans out there, you can now finally warp or go into light speed. Ready? Here we go. Hang on to something. Okay, so as you can see, it looks really cool here as well. So let's go ahead and animate this. I'll put this slider all the way to the left. I'll click on the stopwatch. And we are in the Millennium Falcon, guys. That's right. And we're going to warp into space. So on this frame, we're going to be just waiting for the Imperial Empire to catch up to us. All right, Darth Vader's right behind us. And of course, we hit the switch and nothing happens. And then we're going to hit it again. And then we're going to warp away. So we're in space and we're warped. And I'm going to now use the current time indicator and show you that we've animated that over time.